welcome back, everyone, to the Dice Pirates podcast, our first episode of 2022. This is episode 29, where we're doing just kind of a recap of our games that we played over the holidays, what we were able to get to, some gifts that we got. I am your host, Ian, as always, joined by Matt and Aaron. How you guys doing?
Ahoy! We're setting sail again, the Dice Pirates.
Once again, into the wild blue yonder.
Wait,
Of
that's a aviation thing.
Is that-
We're doing
I-
nautical
we are-
puns.
I didn't know if that was
Sir.
water
Sea.
or space.
Sir.
Do you
It's
think
all
we're in
blue.
space?
It's all blue.
Do you know what a ship is?
Water's
are we on-
blue, sky is blue.
You know, I've never established.
Space
Could
is
we
blue.
canon decide that we're space pirates right now?
I mean, here's the thing. Like,
I would be a space pirate.
oh, not Netrunner. Oh, what is it called? The Star Wars from like 3.5.
Some people call me a space cowboy.
I bet no one calls you the gangster of love. Spelljammer.
Some people call me Maurice.
Spelljammer. D&D had spaceships. So
Okay, before we get
we could be
copyright
space
struck
pirates.
somehow, before we sing the entire song, we're gonna move on to our soapboxes.
Wow.
Matt, do you have something for us today?
I do. You know, I kind of want to hear your take on this. I got a hot take from Reddit. I don't try to spend a lot of time on Reddit because it frightens me.
There's no other kind of take from Reddit than a hot take.
No, it's too hot for me most of the time. Reddit frightens me. It feels like the internet, where the internet goes pro, and I'm not ready for it. But I did find this on /boardgames the other day, and I thought it was a really interesting post and point of discussion. So this is from a user named Makistius. That feels right. And the heading is, back in the hobby after 20 plus years, is the scarcity normal? And he intros one of the striking things about this hobby and a change from the days of yore is that it feels like the majority of the games that get talked about in forums and YouTube reviews and subreddits are not actually for sale. Take the top 10 of 2021 for the Dice Tower guys. Their 4 picks are Merchant's Cove, Sleeping Gods, Cascadia, and Ark Nova. Not a single one of those games is actually available in retail. And he kind of goes on to compare the hobby of board games to movies or video games, where the majority of games, from critically acclaimed stuff and indie stuff to like the big mainstream AAA titles, you can pretty much find now. Most media is like really accessible, even like really obscure movies. If you're a movie buff, or like if you want to play pretty much any video game, you can find it on Steam or somewhere online for you to play it. And so, but board gaming is a little bit weird, in which some of the most popular, most critically acclaimed stuff is probably Kickstarter exclusive or otherwise crowdfunded, which means if you didn't get in early to get it, you probably don't have a copy to play. And even if a game did have a short retail run, it can be really hard to get a hold of some of the most in-demand games. And so scarcity, and sometimes like what feels like artificial scarcity, really kind of plagues this hobby in a way. And I think it makes it a high barrier of entry for people to get in. It kind of concerns me. What do you guys feel about that? Do you see that?
So one of the unique things about board games as an art form, as a form of media, is that if I want to watch a movie, if I want to listen to a song, if I want to read a book, if I want to even look at a piece of art, I can do that without physically owning that piece of art. When you make and release a movie, you can do anything from put it up on YouTube to exclusively release it in theaters. But even in theaters, every person who walks into that theater doesn't have to own a physical copy of that movie. That one copy still feeds 30 people every 2 hours over the course of however many months. They didn't make a billion copies of Spider-Man No Way Home, right? They downloaded it to the theaters. It can exist digitally. You don't have to physically own. They did make $1 billion, and feelings about that mostly good. And because we're in an age where board gaming is absolutely exploding in popularity, on the one hand, you've got a lot more people playing games, but on the other hand, you've got a lot more people making games. And it's still a finite market. And because every copy has to be made.
Yeah, I think that's like where a lot of this ends up kind of coalescing in is that there's a lot of factors that really come together because you're talking about the scarcity of board games now is partially due to the fact that they are Kickstarter based, so people are going to get the game, the people that want it, and if you don't hear about it beforehand, then maybe it comes out. If it does well, they do a re-release potentially, then they send it out to some people. But because board gaming is still a smaller hobby, and unless you're, Milton Bradley and you're putting out millions of copies of Monopoly that are going out to every single store because people always buy Monopoly, you're not going to send out, a million copies of, Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion to every Target, everywhere. I mean, you do see some of them somewhere, but like every store is not going to have that because chances are you're not going to have people just picking that up on a whim. It's going to be less likely. And so I think a lot of those kind of you see the difficulty of that where it's harder for somebody to just say, hey, I'm just going to throw this out there and hopefully people buy it. That's something that Jamie Stegmaier talked about a lot in some of his blogs. We talked about the reasons he got away from Kickstarter. While those are concerns and you have to figure out like how much am I going to send, that is something that can become difficult though, is because if you do go Kickstarter, then there is scarcity of your game after it. If you wanted the game and you missed out on your Kickstarter, you're out of luck.
Yeah, I think it's that devil's bargain of like crowdfunding that we've kind of touched on before, and that's what that post really resonated with me because on the one hand, crowdfunding has made more cool and interesting games possible. I mean, we've talked about games that just wouldn't have been made in a traditional publisher model that is geared toward producing a lot of copies for a mass retail audience. I mean, that's why a certain slate of really popular family board games has stayed in print forever because those are a safe bet for a publisher to like make a bunch of copies of. But at the same time, the Kickstarter crowdfunding world means if you're not engaged with that, you may miss out on playing a lot of really good games, or they enter the market, the secondary market, at a high cost sometimes. Which actually, I'm going to talk about that in a bit later when we get into our kind of main focus for today's episode. But that's it. I don't have a whole lot more to say about that. It's just an interesting thing. It's an interesting kind of side effect of where the industry is. A lot of really great games are being made. They're not always being made in huge numbers.
And this isn't 100% necessarily the same thing. I just wanted to shout out to this because I thought it was a very well put together thing. Board game on Kickstarter that I backed called So You've Been Eaten. In their last update, it's the first 0 to 2 player game because both player factions have automas and there are rules to just play the automas against each other. So that's a fun thing.
Ugh, zero player gaming is going to be the new hot trend in board games.
It's the auto battlers for board
just
games.
literally
Can't
watch
wait.
it play out. Anyway, their most recent update, because they're in the fulfillment stages of their game where they finalized what it's going to look like and everything that's going in the box. They just got to make it and get it shipped. And in our continuing struggles with the supply chain, they put a very lengthy roundup and summary of all of these different articles from all of these different sources. Some of them are Yahoo Finance, some of them are Board Game Geek, some of them are just retailers making big threads on Twitter. It's a wide range of sources from the past 6 months, just different perspectives on the current supply chain problems that we're having and all the different areas and facets of it. And I read most of the articles. The Yahoo Finance one was a little... It assumed I was a lot more educated than I am. But there's some really good reads in here that add a lot of extra perspective to everything that's going on, and I just wanted to bring attention to that. We'll have, like I said, you can Google So You've Been Eaten Kickstarter. It'll be the last update, and then we'll also have a link to that in the show notes.
That's good stuff.
We are going to go ahead and move on to our game. We're going to jump in to Bitter Board Gamers. This, of course, is the game where I read some one-star reviews from Board Game Geek, and you guys try to guess what the game is. You guys excited?
I love it. I'm always excited for some Bitter Board Gamers. And,
I'm excited.
I think I'm gonna be unbroken this year. I'm gonna be 100% on all my guesses.
I was just thinking that I should go and re-listen to all the back catalog and figure out our respective scores. Because I bet,
Whoa, that would actually be interesting. You start keeping track and make this into a thing.
I bet you're doing phenomenally better than I am at this.
Wow. Yes, I think so too.
Maybe it's because Matt is very negative, but he just manages to figure out what these people are talking about. You know, maybe that's what it is.
I don't have that old man shaking his fist rage.
Who knows, honestly.
I hate doors.
All right, we're gonna jump in. Here is your first review for your first game. Could have been a great coin war game, but thematically screwed up, waiting for someone to use and adapt its system for a proper military history game.
I'm just going to take a flyer here and say Root.
It's Root.
Yeah, that was my guess. That was definitely going to be Root.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's fair. As a gimme, I guess, a little bit.
But, like, he already did PAX Premier, so, like, if you wanted to play that as a war game, he already made that game several times.
I love actually versions. This is a good one to bring up because I love that there's a fascinating heated kind of sub discussion going on Board Game Geek World and in Board Game World where is Root a war game or not?
Oh, 100%. 100% it's a war game.
I want to read you the next review because this man is on a crusade. Okay. I don't play this game. And I don't even mind to play it.
That's a great place to
start. I saw the description of the game, and this game is a strategy game, not a war game, considering all games in this category. So I put a 1, because the category of the game is clearly wrong. This wrongness must be corrected to assure that this category is not polluted by someone who wants to do marketing for this game in a category that's not correct. If this injustice is not corrected, you will see this game be number 1 or in the top 3 in this category. If this case happens, I will not contribute financially anymore to BGG until that injustice is corrected. If the case is corrected, I will retire my 1 rating and continue as usual to contribute to BGG.
I wish that I cared about anything as much as this man cares about Root not being
I feel like if the average person in America cared about civic politics and in their local government as much as that person cared about this, the world would be a very different place.
I don't know that I'm this sweaty about my kids as this man is about Root being a war game. That is dedication to a cause.
Okay, a lot of feelings. I agree with Aaron though. Root is almost certainly a war game in that it definitely depicts a war, which is the minimum standard to be considered a war game. Now I think war gamers as a sub hobby within board gaming is a whole subculture, and I know there's a certain type of person out there that if it doesn't have hexes and the game's components aren't entirely made of little square pieces of cardboard, then it's not a war game. I think if Root's entire game played exactly the same and it was just not fantasy little creatures, and also maybe if it wasn't cute, if it was still fantasy but it was gritty, people would be totally different.
If you go on BGG and you look up Cole Worley's design diaries for Root, in its early days, it was about the Afghanistan conflict, in the early stages of its design, and then. He approached Patrick Leader of Leader Games, and they worked together, and they found the magic sauce that is okay. So There's this ruthless onslaught battle, and there's cute kitties and cute birdies.
Yeah.
And it's the best-selling war game of all time. So
cutest meeples that have ever actually been in a game potentially of all time. I love it, and. I mean, it's definitely, like you said, it's incredibly popular. It's working. Alrighty. So, you guys ready for your second game?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. First review. The worst game I've played. Too much interaction. You can't plan nothing because the other players destroy your plans.
Too much interaction.
Too much interaction.
Right? That's...
I know what game this is.
Too much interaction.
This is interesting because, it's actually, this was a common theme among many of the low reviews is that there's too much interaction with other people.
Too much interaction.
I
got nothing.
What this game gave me immediate feelings of is Tiny Town.
It is not Tiny Towns.
What?
I can see that. Matt, I'm gonna let you go free, Matt. How do you feel
Oh no,
about Tiny Towns?
Matt hates Tiny Town. That's the thing. I don't hate that game, but it is so the player interaction in Tiny Town is that when anyone picks a resource, all the players have to pick that resource, and you have to figure out where you're going to place it on your board. And so your plans are constantly getting foiled because Ian's picking glass over there like a real jerk, and it's like I don't need glass right now, but he needs glass. But it's like I don't care what Ian needs. So, that's Tiny Town in a nutshell to me. It also requires a real, like, four-dimensional chess kind of mentality of being able to picture how your board's going to look after you construct the building where you're going to place them. It's crazy. I can't do it. I can't do it.
If I had to guess, I would guess Sidereal Confluence. But I don't know that there's any negative reviews for that because I think the vast majority of people who were insane enough to actually sit down and play that game were already predisposed to enjoy that game.
Well, it is not, in fact, Sidereal Confluence, so you're correct. I'll go ahead and give you your second review. I don't mind the program your moves mechanic, but the artwork is so ugly and repulsive, and the treasures so few and far between that I never want to touch this game again.
Oh, this is Colt Express.
It is Colt Express.
Too much.
The art is ugly and repulsive. Well, it's not great.
It's
I do sort of get that. That's a very subjective thing. I've oftentimes thought I don't exactly love the art, but when you say the art, that's really just your character board. The meeples are great little cowboy meeples with guns. That's awesome. The train, the little three-dimensional train all splayed out. I love Colt Express because it comes with setup pieces that are entirely superfluous and there for theming, like a little cactus and a rock that have nothing to do with the game. I love it. I love that was manufactured and placed in there, and it's like, hey Steve, what's the cactus for? It's for everything. It's for everything. If we don't put the cactus, yeah, exactly. If we don't put this cactus in here, I'll walk.
I mean, even the train could just be a picture on a board that you move around on. There's no reason for it to be.
There was no reason.
A literal choo-choo that you scoot around your table, but they did.
Probably once they decided to do the trains, they had all this extra space on the boards that punch outs, and they were like, we got to do something with the space. Let's make a cactus.
I want to think that they were so committed to the cactus that some part of the game got cut so they could make room for it. It was like it's either this mechanic Jurgen or the cactus. It's the cactus for sure.
We got to cut the dice, or we got to cut the cactus.
We're changing the whole game around.
A lot of people really did just dislike that pretty much everything you do is interacting with other people, which I don't mean.
That's
like most party games. I mean, I don't know. It feels like an odd complaint, but I kind of get it. It's
an odd complaint
on the one hand, it makes you feel like you're playing a game where you're focused on getting, you're trying to get the highest score, but it's more of a movie than a game. I don't know.
I was just gonna say it's weird because the too much player interaction, that's the core of the game. That's the whole game. There's nothing else except you interacting with other there's nothing else happening.
I want a Euro version of Colt Express where there's no player interaction, no take that mechanics, and you just build a little engine that generates the points.
A literal
What if instead of playing cards you pulled cubes out of a bag?
Oh, get out of here. I'll throw you off the train. I do want to say that my experience of playing Colt Express every time is that we should probably explain this if you've never played it. Colt Express, everyone plays, you're all bandits trying to rob a train, and on your turn you play a series of cards in sequence that program the moves you're going to make. You're going to pick up some loot, you're going to punch a bandit, you're going to shoot your gun, you're going to make some moves. You play your cards, everyone around the table plays their cards. Some of the cards are face up, so you see what your opponents are doing, but some of them are face down, so there's always a certain mystery about whether or not if you go to punch Ian, he's actually going to be standing there when you go to punch him.
Most importantly, you're playing all these cards into a deck, stacking them on top of each other in turn.
And then it plays out like a movie clip out at the end of the round, and the cards are flipped through, and then you resolve the actions, and it's like watching a little scene from a Western. It's actually great. It's lovely. But my problem with it is that my ADHD sort of brain is such that like there's never been a time when I've successfully like tracked what anyone is doing. It doesn't matter if they're playing face up or face down. I have no idea what's going on. So I'm just playing cards. So my favorite part of any Cult Express is when they get to the end of the round, they start playing out the cards. I'm like, here we go. I have no idea what's about to happen.
Great.
I don't even know what my character's doing. I forgot the first card I played.
I was just about to say, especially if you're playing the face down round, as soon as I put that card down, it's immediately gone from my brain. I have no idea what I was doing.
So.
And then there's always one person who just gets shot, way too often, and then the bullets start filling up your hand, so you have fewer actions that you can take.
Yeah.
Still a very good game. I'm sure that's also a game that we were able to get to the table over Christmas, so I'm sure we are going to briefly talk about that again when we get to our main discussion. So we're going to get to that, and we'll be right back in just a second.
All right, and welcome back to the Dice Pirates, and we're going to go ahead and dive into our main topic for the week, which is going to be a holiday recap. Yeah, so we've been on a break for a hot minute. I think we had our last episode sometime way back in I don't know, November, maybe even October. Gosh, I don't even know.
Early December is when our last episode was like the first week of December.
First week of December, yeah. So we've been on a break for a minute, and we thought it would be good to kind of take a look back at what the heck your friendly neighborhood Dice Pirates have been up to. So we're going to talk about games we've played, cool new games we've picked up, and share some thoughts on what's been going on in our gaming lives. Ian, I'll kick it off with you. We had what can only be described as a game day to end all game days. You came down to my neck of the woods, and we got together with a bunch of friends and we played board games for something like 9 or 10 hours. It was insane.
It was absolutely fantastic. My wife and I drove down, got like a COVID test once we got into town just to make sure we were good, and then we came over, and yeah, we sat down, did a grill out day, got there at like 1 o'clock. I think we left at like 10. It was great. We played 10 games or something like that over the course. Some were larger games, some were just fun party games. It was a blast, and we have a lot of games to talk about there. And so I mean, we played Colt Express, of course. That's when we were able to get to the table and get the full player count in. A game that I do want to briefly talk about is a game that I was actually able to pick up. I grabbed it from my parents' house. Was Thurn and Taxis, which is a German game. A fairly old one. It's actually kind of around the beginning of like the renaissance of board gaming. Carcassonne, that type of time period. And it's kind of like a Ticket to Ride type game. Where you're building like connections from place to place, and it's also an area control type game where you're not only building routes, but where the routes are based on the regions of the map is also important to score you points. I like it a lot. I think it's really fun. It's kind of it's a little bit more involved personally for me than something like Ticket to Ride, and I think it gives you a little bit more in terms of strategy. So, but I was able to bring that, and I was able to play that with you, Matt. So I was just curious as to what you thought jumping into that for the first time, because I personally really like that game, and I think it's kind of a hidden classic.
I really enjoyed it. My first thought when I sat down to play it is that you had told me that you got in this game called Thurn and Taxis, and I heard it as Thurn and Taxis, and I thought it was going to be this wild, like crazy taxi-like game about taxis, maybe like looping through the city, and I was like hyped to play Thurn and Taxis. It is not Thurn and Taxis. It's Thurn and Taxis, Thurn, und Taxis. Is that it? I don't know. It's very German. So it's not what you think. If you're hearing turning taxis, that's not it. It's the most Euro game of all the Euro games I've ever played. It is very sort of dry thematically. It's not thematic at all. You're just kind of making patterns and making things happen on the board with the little wooden pieces. It's got delightfully old school Euro game art, like very simplistic little people in medieval times or turn of the century times.
Dude, I love that restaurant.
Turn of the century, yeah, medieval. Turn of the century times is like medieval times, but they drive little wooden buggies at each other slowly across the arena floor, and then everyone gets smallpox at the end. So it's really good. It's a good time. Yeah, it's actually a really solid game. I'm kind of giving it a hard time for its extreme sort of Euro gameness, but don't let its kind of bland exterior fool you. It's a fun one of these games of like building a linking thing across the board, sort of I guess maybe like shades of like Brass, Lancashire, or something like that. You've played games like this, but this one's a really good version of it. I had a lot of fun. I thought that I was doing good the whole time we were playing it, and really thought that I was going to win it, and then turned out I was doing terrible the whole time. And that's the sign of a good Euro game. When you realize, oh, I don't understand this at all. I got to play it again.
I'm looking at the game right now. I've not played it before. I have heard of it, but I've not played it. The little house meeples are just a gosh darn adorable.
They are adorable, and it's great to like watch your little trail of little houses like build up. Thematically, like what you're doing is creating like postal routes, I think, but it doesn't feel like that. It feels like you're building a little like subdivision, maybe. I don't know. It's a strange little game, but it's a lot of fun.
Like you said, truly a classic Euro in I mean, in every sense of the word. Aaron, was there a game that you were able to pull out, or was there a gift that you got over the holidays that you really enjoyed that you want to point out?
It's not a board game necessarily, but I got Pokemon this year came out with or maybe it was last year, a like starter set for the game that comes in a box like a board game. It's got a board that you put in the middle of the table, and it comes with like 3 pre-built decks to teach you the basics of the game. And so my son and I have been playing Pokemon, the trading card game, and he's really getting into it because he's getting to the age where like he can read the card and understand what it means, and I don't have to read it for him and then pretend I don't know what's in his hand, which is very exciting for me to play those games with him. This is not 100% board game related. I did get a mystery Christmas present board game, a copy of Guilds of London and the expansion Wards of London from now no longer extant board game publisher Tasty Mental Games, rest in peace. Showed up at my house.
Oh.
Don't know who got it though.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I love that.
Haven't
You got
played
a
it
mystery
yet.
gift?
I did get a mystery gift, and that was the only board game I got, which makes sense because if anybody knowingly gave me board games, my wife would send people out for them.
Is it possible that it was a Kickstarter that you forgot you did?
No, because it's a game that's been out forever. So I don't.
Just
I don't
super
know.
delayed, you know.
Yeah. But no, I don't have anything super fun and exciting. As we didn't get together with people much over the holiday. Everyone that I know is old enough that they have like their own household families and children that, you know, they're all spending time with their kids or whatever and didn't have time to play board games. And then I just wasn't on the short list for the invite to the Dice Pirates Hangout, which
you live,
we're going to discuss
we won't discuss our
after
actual
we finish
locations.
recording.
We won't discuss our actual locations because we don't want anyone to actually show up to find us. But you live real far away from me, and Ian lives real far away from both of us. And Ian came here. If we would have scheduled better, if we would have known that it was going to work out, it would have taken. But it would take a lot of logistical planning to get the 3 of us in one physical location. Oh, do you know, this is worth talking about, and I want to do it on the show because there was a time when you could have come and played games with me at my house on Thanksgiving because you were in town. You are the brother of fellow Dice Pirate Max. That's been established as canon. We all know that. And you guys were all together. And Max was coming over, and he's like, "I'm bringing Aaron," but Aaron lost his keys and spent like 7 hours looking for a set of keys until you couldn't come. You were within like 2 hours of me, and you couldn't even make it because you couldn't.
45 minutes away.
Yeah, that's
and I
hilarious.
could have come and hang out, and couldn't find. We couldn't find my wife's car keys. We brought her car. So on our trip.
So it was a near miss. Like we could have. I'm still. It's been so long since I've seen you in person that I'm not unconvinced that you're a elaborate AI simulation.
I'm a VTuber now. I exist as a consciousness in the cloud.
You are an NFT. Like we're actually going to sell you, and you can own. You are a non-fungible token. He's not been fungible for years, so he's been ahead of the curve. I have something to say about the Pokemon board game that you mentioned because
Yes.
I picked that up for my kids a couple of years ago, maybe, or a year and a half ago.
Okay, so it's been out forever, and I just didn't know about it.
The board game arena, yeah, it was like maybe not that long ago, maybe like last Christmas, I think is when I first started seeing it in stores. And I think it is a fantastic little thing because nothing surprised me more after years and years of my kids collecting Pokemon cards and nobody having a clue how to play the game, and us just having thousands of them littering the house. Nothing surprised me more to sit down and play it and realize, oh, this is actually a really fun game. The
Right.
Pokemon trading card game is a fun game. It's like, shades of any collectible combat driven like card game that you've ever played. It's a little bit Magic, it's a little bit Yu-Gi-Oh. It's all of that. It's not going to surprise you, but it's actually a really fun game, and this box set that you buy teaches you the rules of the game. It's got a fold out hard board with all of the rules and the order of the turn. It's really solid. It was a lot of fun. So we still play Pokemon every once in a while.
The starter decks are in you don't shuffle them, they're in an assigned order, and then
Mm-hmm.
each player gets their own little rule book that walks them through.
Oh,
You're
that's
going to
fantastic.
draw the top card, and it's going to be this card, and then you're going to play this card out of your hand.
Yeah.
So it really it really walks you through, and it doesn't, you don't have to ever really look at the rule book as long as you're just playing those cards. I'm sure if you were playing with whatever cards that exist outside of this, I'm sure there are a lot more complicated mechanics and stuff that you would need to read
I'm
up
glad
on
you
and
mentioned that.
understand them.
That's something I haven't seen really in any other board game. Is they basically your first time playing it is a scripted tutorial. It's like the first hour and a half of any new video game you get, where they're like, press X to engage with an object. This game it literally walks you through like a scripted version of the game. And I was like, man, there's some really complicated board games that could benefit from that, where it's like, okay, for your first game, set everything up in this way, put all the cards in this order, and then we're gonna walk you through your first game, like play by play.
Yeah, I love that some games like Wingspan does that, where like when you first bring out Wingspan, there's actually sheets you give everybody at the table. Be like, all right, here are the cards you start with. Here are the cards on the table. Set the dice up as so. Here's how you play your first three
Ooh,
turns.
I don't remember
You
doing that
know,
the first time I played at
it's
Wingspan.
I think we didn't do it because being people who are like very into board games, it kind of it does limit your options. It pushes you in one direction, and so we kind of got into it. But I found that like it works so well if you have people who are a little overwhelmed by the game. Just start playing the game, and it actually teaches you how to play, which is so nice.
Another game that I got a billion years ago from Kickstarter, Fog of Love. Which, if you've never played it, I recommend very highly get a hand on it and get a friend who's willing to play a game that isn't. It is a board game as a thing, but it's It's a two-player role-playing romantic comedy, where each player is one of two people in a relationship, and the cards are all about going through and forming a relationship with the other person. It's tremendous fun if you have friends who are willing to let go and be a part of the game and get really into it. But when you first open up the game, it has the same thing where it has a specific deck where it tells you play this card, then play that card, and as you go, it'll slowly introduce the mechanics one at a time rather than what you normally have to do at board game night, which is I'm going to talk at you for about 30 to 45 minutes, and I need you to just retain all of this for 2 hours after I'm done talking, which is, like you're saying, that is something.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why most games don't do it, because I cannot imagine the design time budget that you have to assign to having a pre-scripted first game or first 5 turns or whatever. But it should be more common than it is. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think that should be on the box when you do it.
That is one of the worst parts of like getting a new game out, is especially if you're teaching people who, if it's a more complicated game, a big game, it can be really tough to do that teaching. So it's always fun, especially, when we got together and we were able to just jump into games that we already knew how to play, or if it's a game that's really simple, a game that we actually picked up as we were visiting people, because it's a game we've played a couple times, but we wanted to share it with them, is a game called Taco Cat Goat Cheese Pizza, which is a card game. And if you've ever heard of Egyptian Rat Slap, or ever played the card game War, games like this, you get a deck of cards, you throw it on the table, everyone else throws their card on the table. Very similar idea. It's a bunch of adorable little drawings of various cats. You got goats in there, groundhogs, narwhals, all sorts of really adorable like drawings on these cards. And as you put your card down, you're going to say one of the titular words, taco, cat, goat, cheese, pizza, in that order. And as you run around, once a word gets said that matches the card that's put down, you slap. And everyone tries to get their hand down there as fast as possible. And if you are the slowest one, you're going to get all the cards, and you don't want the cards. You want to get rid of your cards as fast as possible. So easy to tell people, especially if you got some younger kids. Really fun. We pulled that out. We played with actually a fun mix of adults and kids, and it was a genuinely fun time. And the best part about the game is that the people who aren't there when you explain the rules, like Matt, who is off doing the grilling thing, the Grillmeister, and he comes back in, and if somebody slams down a card and says "goat," and everyone goes boom and throws their hands on the table, or somebody puts down a narwhal and everyone claps their hands above their heads to make a horn and then slaps the table, and Matt's like, "What am I looking at? What are you guys doing?"
I was off in the distance working on grilling, like you said, getting dinner ready, and this game broke out, and I didn't even hear the explanation or what it was, and I thought that maybe I was having a stroke. I didn't know like what was happening. These people were just saying strange words and gesticulating wildly. It was wild, but that game did look a lot of fun.
It is just a really simple. I mean, it's so cheap. It's also a small box, easy to carry around. I think it's generally worth picking up if you got some small kids. It's just really fun to play with people, and it's so easy to pick up. And I think those are really good games to have, especially during the holidays.
So the game that I really wanted to talk about, I got a couple of games that I was hoping to mention on this kind of recap, but the one that surprised me the most was a game that I picked up. I think I bought it on Cyber Monday, and I was looking for a game in particular to play with my kids and the family and other folks at home because we were gonna have a couple weeks off around the holidays and everyone's gonna be in the house together. And I was like, what would be fun? And I stumbled across a good deal on a game that I honestly have given a fairly hard time on the podcast. So I come here to eat a little bit of crow, and that is Marvel United from Simon is really good.
I'm so excited to talk about this one.
I could not
Is it
believe it.
really?
So, all right. So, a little background. So, on the show, repeatedly, I think I have mentioned Marvel United, and in particular, its various exorbitant Kickstarters, as sort of emblematic of the worst right now in like game crowdfunding culture. Uh, Simon has run some absolutely stratospheric Kickstarters around this line of games, raised a ton of money, and done so on the back of like crazy Kickstarter exclusive stretch goals, expansions that add other heroes and stuff. And they've raised a ton of money. They did it again with a new base game around the X-Men characters just recently. And I have always kind of rolled my eyes at this series as kind of emblematic of the kind of excessive cash grab driven marketplace. And I just always kind of quietly assumed that the game itself was probably pretty bad. But I thought it looked like the kids would like it. The big plastic hero minis are sort of chibi sized and looked cute. And the deal that I found on Amazon, there was a vendor selling the base game with the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse expansion and the Doctor Strange character pack. And I thought, well, the kids are in a real Spider-Man phase right now. They love Spider-Man. So that put me over the top. So I got it. Didn't expect much of it. Actually sat there for a few weeks before I even opened it. And much to my surprise and even slightly my chagrin, I realized this is actually one of my very favorite co-op games I've ever played. It does a couple of things just right in my book. One is it has a really clever mechanic that is absolutely fun every time you play it, which is you use action cards and there's no dice in this, which is kind of as much as I like dice, I realize is kind of a breath of fresh air because so many games like this would have dice driven combat that could be really frustrating, especially for small kids. So you play action cards on your turn. You can always do a few guaranteed actions based on what you played. You can move, you could do a heroic action to rescue some civilians in stress, or you could punch out a bad guy. The next hero who goes plays their card, and they get to use the actions on your card and their card. So that's the Unite part of Marvel Unite. It's not just a cute name. You actually combo together your actions off the hero in front of you, who played before you. So the strategy involved in like working together is so good in a co-op game because it kind of like takes away, well, it doesn't completely take away the quarterback thing, but it makes everybody feel really involved in having to work together as a team. Because maybe I need to make sure that I play a move action on my turn so that this person can move on their turn, so they can do an attack, and then this person will capitalize on that attack card, and so on and so forth. And you really feel like you're working together, like the Avengers, like Marvel heroes. It's super fun. The other thing it does really well is it's so thematic. The basic setup of the game is that there are little locations that represent spots around the city, and you're literally just zipping around, rescuing people, beating up henchmen, chasing the villain as they move around, causing chaos all around the city. And the sense that you're in a classic comic book story is actually really compelling. It's really really fun. It feels like a great Marvel adventure, like when you use Spider-Man's extra movement actions to do lots of little like web swinging like moves all around town, or like Hulk can come in and do a huge attack. And then the last thing that I really like about it is it comes packed in the base game with 3 villains, and each villain is very distinct. So the game has feels very different depending on which villain you're playing, like the sense of how the danger escalates and the objectives that you're trying to accomplish. And so there's actually a lot of variety there in the base box, depending on what hero you play and what villain you choose to go up against. Uh, Really good game. Maybe I'm overselling it a bit. I'm a huge Marvel fan, so I'm probably inclined to like it. But Ian, you played it. Am I crazy? Is this as good as I think it is?
No, I mean it's a great game. So it was, it's 9 o'clock at night. I didn't want to leave yet. I wanted to play one more game, and you were like, "Well, what do you want to play?" And so it was a choice between either Tiny Epic Galaxies or this one. And in my heart, I thought Tiny Epic Galaxies. I know that game. I want to play that game. But we went with this one because oh, it's new. Let's try it. And I started off first 10 minutes. I was like, all right, I wish I chose the other one, but I'll enjoy it. I'll have a good time. And then it clicked, and it got me, and I was hooked.
Yeah.
Because you start out, I mean, I think you said each villain is very unique. There's a distinct feel to it, and they
Hmm.
behave differently. And it's a lot like Dead of Winter to me. Like, I think that's a really good comparison because a lot like Dead of Winter, you're running to different locations. You're kind of having to deal with things overflowing. If too many henchmen or too many civilians end up at a certain place, then that place starts going into crisis, and you have to deal with what's going on in that particular location. So you're constantly running around on the map trying to prevent the bad guy from just making things even worse. While at the same time, you're trying to satisfy the conditions that will allow you to actually damage the villain and get to the point where you can beat him. So how do you go about doing it? It's a lot of throwing things around. I like that there's no like tension there. I mean, obviously that's me personally, but it takes a lot of what I like about Dead of Winter and just makes it a lot easier to parse and a lot more like enjoyable and more cooperative for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously there's no worry about a traitor, but like you said, bouncing off of each other. It's also super well balanced, which I thought was, and we only got to play the one game, but you said this has happened many times as you're playing, where we start out and immediately we're getting overwhelmed. Like I'm like, oh man, we're not gonna make this. It's just going
Hmm.
really badly. And then we started to slowly turn it around as we get more cards out, as we're starting to piggyback more, and as you start to each location has a negative side effect every time you go there. But if you complete a certain objective there, you can you can get rid of that and it becomes a positive every time you go there. So as the game goes on, you actually get stronger because you're clearing locations. And so we start going through and all of a sudden, boom, oh, locations are cleared. We can actually kind of go at the bad guy now. And then we get to the end. It came down to the last card that we could have played.
Yes.
The last possible card before the villain was going to win, we were able to jump in and give him that last final uppercut and take him out. And it felt so good.
There was
I
high
was
fives. There were real high fives happening.
It was
Uh,
incredible. It was incredible. It's a very well. You feel like you got a chance, and that's the best part of a cooperative game, even if you don't win.
So many cooperative games are pitched like super difficult, and particularly with this one that you're probably going to want to play with young gamers, you need to be able to win probably more than you lose. And I'll say that we played this one a ton over the break. The kids got into it, and so I played it probably, I don't know, I think I've played it more than a dozen times, which is actually a lot for me. We play a lot of different games. There's very few board games I've played this many times in such a short amount of time. And I will say that we've won more than we've lost, which is what you want. And most games go down to a nail biter finish. It really is pitched really well. If you're an adult, like serious gamer, is this gonna have a place at your table? And if you don't have kids, I think it might. If you have like struggled with finding a good cooperative game that was the right mix of difficulty, that you do like win more than you lose. If your group's been frustrated by kind of brutal slogs that some co-op games can be, this one's light enough and breezy enough to I think it could be really really fun, especially if you like Marvel. Don't let the chibi like young looking like style youthful like art style kind of like fool you. It's good classic Marvel fun. You'll have a good time with it. And I think I want to say too, it's very similar to another game that Simon made. It feels like a better version of the Kick-Ass board game. The Kick-Ass board game is really
Such a good game.
well, it's also really, really hard. The Kick-Ass board game is.
Yes.
I've played it several times. It's a good counterpoint to this. It has the same mechanic of like locations around the city that are filling up with like henchmen, and you've got to clear them. And the big bad has a plot that you got to resolve. There's a lot there. I actually think that I don't know which game came out first, but these games are related in their DNA. Eric Lang is involved in the design of both of them. But Kick-Ass is too hard. It uses dice-driven combat to resolve the battles, and you frustratingly lose at times when you really needed to get a win. The rate at which henchmen spawn is bananas in that game. Kick-Ass is a game that you will lose more than you win. You got to earn a victory. Marvel United is pitched the other way. You'll probably win more than you lose, or it'll be tight, and it's very fun. I have one final thought, then I will move off of this. So my gripe before I ever played it, why I had such a bad taste in my mouth about this game, was its many Kickstarter exclusives and how it drove up these exorbitant Kickstarters and raised so much money. And I felt like this is sort of emblematic of some of the problems in the industry. And I still feel that way because here's the thing. We really like this game now. We'd like to buy some of the mini expansions that have been released. We can't because they were all Kickstarter exclusives. And if you go on Amazon right now and search for Marvel United, you would be flabbergasted, possibly even agog at the prices that people are asking for some of these Kickstarter expansions. One that I would love to get, just because I'd love to get Thor in the mix, is the Tales of Asgard expansion. It's for a reasonable $110.99 right now. Maybe you want to get you want to get that maybe you want to get that Spider-Man expansion that I was able to pick up for a great deal on Cyber Monday. But now it's $80 as a standalone. Or maybe you want the Guardians of the Galaxy expansion. You can't get it. That one's not for sale. The all-in exclusive Kickstarters, everything, the all-in Kickstarter box is a mere $260. So that's what Kickstarter exclusive stretch goals do. They create an insane aftermarket that makes people like me who've fallen in love with the game, I'm basically done with it. I won't buy anything else. There's nothing else for me to buy unless I do want to get in on a Kickstarter in the future, but I don't know. Do I want to support this madness?
And just, as a side note, mark your calendars, folks. January 13th, 2022. Matt admitted he was wrong.
Well, I was wrong-ish. I think my feelings about their fundraising model stand. I think the surprise is that the game turned out to be really good, which is there's something to be said for that.
That's a happy surprise for sure.
That is a happy surprise.
I'm happy with that.
I mean, the positive thing is that the base box of Marvel United is now being sold in a mass market retail edition that has, as I understand it, slightly dinkier components. Not the minis, but the paper and stuff, the
right.
cardboard that's in it. You can get it pretty easily at a retailer like Target or a bookstore or whatever, or your friendly local game shop. So Marvel United base box, not hard to get, and the X-Men new base box is also pretty easy to get, relatively cheap. all the various expansions that add more heroes, that stuff is like you have to go through a black market. You have to go on the dark web to find that stuff, man.
Well, I'll probably hold off then until I can come see you again to play it, but it was a very exciting game for sure. The last thing that I want to talk about, throw to you guys before we start to wrap this up, as we look forward to the next year, what's a game you have not been able to try yet that you really want to try, a game that you've been meaning to pick up but haven't had the chance, or just something that's been sitting on your shelf of shame? Because I've made a challenge for myself to play every game on my board game shelf this year. I'm going to give it a good shot. I'm looking forward to doing that, but I'm curious, what are you guys looking to play?
I have a couple of games on my shelf of shame that I want to get down this year. When I look around, I'm in my board game room right now, and I'm looking at my shelves, and I realize I'm pretty proud that I actually see only two games left that I have never played that are sitting up there. One is Lords of Hellas that we picked up a while back, and find ourselves continually intimidated by the manual when we try to read it. So I'd like to play Lords of Hellas soon just to get that down. And I also have a copy of, still in the shrink wrap, a copy of Deception Murder in Hong Kong. I just got to organize a big group because that's kind of a party game. Beyond those two, the other one I'm real excited about is to play Ankh finally. Max, fellow Dutch pirate, finally got his long delayed Kickstarter all in. So he's got about a quarter ton of plastic mini sitting at his house. And I'm super pumped to play that one. Yeah, and then we knocked
excited.
off. Yeah, we knocked off another bucket list game for us recently too, because over the break we played Twilight Imperium 4th Edition. That's probably too much to recap, but yeah, that's kind of my stuff.
It kind of comes back to what we were talking about Kickstarter. I would love to get Sleeping Gods this year, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But I will do my best. I'll do my best to get that one in there because that's one I really want to be able to play.
That's exciting. I can't. Nothing springs to mind. I've had a lot of success lately with my game group of kind of burning through some of my backlog. What I would like to happen in my social circles this year is I have and I'm going to have over the coming months, thanks to my crippling addiction to spending money on Kickstarter, a huge pile of campaign / narrative / legacy-esque games coming.
Yeah.
And I would like to play one of them through.
Ooh.
Like I've
Okay.
got the.
I love that.
I mean, we've got Destinies that I've brought up over and over again, but like we've only ever played the first mission of it. So like I would really love, because we've got both expansions, so I'd really love to be able to play through that and see everywhere that goes. We've got the Divinity Original Sin board game coming, which looks to be. They
Interesting.
keep sending design updates, and I'm just like salivating over all of it because that's one of the
Wow.
best video games of all time. Not one of
It's
my
a
favorites, but
it's a
one of
good
the
one.
best.
Also a Kickstarter
Stand by that.
success, honestly.
Yes.
So that's fascinating.
So I would love to, or even like I picked up Jaws of the Lion, and like even if Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, and even if I just were to solo my way through it, I would love to just finish one of these like epic scale things matter from session to session and just see one of those all the way through at some point this year.
Yeah, that's a good goal.
So that is the episode. Thanks to everybody who listens for joining us again in 2022. We're thrilled to be able to do more podcasts. If you do enjoy listening to the podcast, we'd love it if you either left us a comment, contact us on Instagram, let us know what you think about the podcast. Heck, if you have an idea for a podcast or something you want to talk about, let us know. Or maybe if you got some rulebook randomness submissions or some reviews that you found online that you thought are great for bitter board gamers, just let us know. We'd love to hear from you, love to get to interact with you. And if you do enjoy us, maybe share the podcast with a friend, something like that. We really enjoy doing this. We feel like we're getting better at it, but of course we'd love to get the feedback from you guys and really hear how we are doing. So, as we move forward. But if people do want to let us know about that, where can they get in touch with us, Matt?
You can find us on Instagram at Dice Pirates. Like Ian said, we'd love to hear from you. You can send us a direct message there, and one of us will answer you back. I promise. And also, if you love the show, one of the best things you could do if you want to do us a solid is rate and review the show on your podcatcher of choice. Apple, Google Play, Spotify, wherever fine podcasts are found, you can find the Dice Pirates. Leave us a rating and a review, and that would be amazing.
We are excited for the coming year. We hope that you guys are too. Keep an eye out for us, of course, wherever you listen to your podcast. And until next time, we will be right here on the Dice Pirates.
Play more games.
See ya.